Mandukya Karika, Pranam Mantra. Om Bhadram Karne Bhishinuyam Deva Bhadram Pashe Makshabhirya Jatra Sthirairangaye Stustuvagung Sastanovihi Vishema Deva Hitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashrava Swasti na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti Nastakshyo Aristanemi Swasti no Brihaspati Dadhatu Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Today we start from verse number 71. The important thing to know is that in the previous talk, Mandukya Karika showed how if the dream objects are unreal, then the objects of the living world have to be unreal. Now, before we continue, there are two important things to know. First is that our Gaudapada, who wrote this Mandukya Karika, he put before us all the arguments coming from the scriptures and all the arguments that we can make to prove that everything is unborn. This no birth, no death. Towards the end, see, we are verse number 71. So barely 30 shlokas remain. We have covered actually the whole of it. It was huge and difficult. What Gaudapada is now doing, summing up things and proposing. Not proposing is not the word, propounding. Propounding the truth according to Advaita Vedanta. Now, one important thing that I would like to mention here is that although there are many schools of Advaita Vedanta, and like they say Shuddha Advaita and this Advaita and that Advaita. Excuse But in reality, there is only one thing, and that is Advaita. When you take one aspect of it, mind it, when you take one aspect of it, you become something. And that does not change Advaita. Advaita remains Advaita. So putting some kind of adjective, it's meaningless. Because what they present as Shuddha Advaita, that is there in Advaita itself. And what they present as Vishishta Advaita, that is also there in Advaita itself. And what they present as Dvaita, that is also there in the Advaita. Now is one of our brother monks. They have started new Vigyan, Vedanta, something. Now that is also in Advaita. Advaita is the whole. You take up something. Now when you take up something, it's already there. Why give a new name? Now if you say that is only true, that is also discussed. It says that some people, they have such persistence that they don't want to change. It will be discussed here. So this is one important thing, that Advaita is the whole. And our Gaudapada, he has even summed up. He is kind of reiterating. He's just re-narrating the facts. Second thing is that every time you come up with philosophy, when you say that this is my worldview, philosophy is actually worldview. Although if you go etymologically, word for word, it means knowledge. Search for knowledge. What is knowledge? But actually, it's worldview. Philosophy gives you the worldview. Now, when you come up with a new philosophy, you have to explain the prevalent beliefs. Supposing you are born in Europe. Europe, people have certain beliefs regarding God, regarding the individual, regarding the society, regarding market. You have to explain all those things. When you come to India, and when you want to give a new worldview, Or you say that this is traditional, and you are just presenting before us the worldview. You say that this is what the Upanishads have to say, or this is what our Ved have to say. In that case, you will have to explain the things that we already know, or things in which we have firm belief, firm faith. One of them is God. You have to explain how you have to explain what is God. Second common belief, which even a kid knows, is mind. What is mind? And how we are born. In India, the additional question is, how do you look at rebirth? How do you look at death? How do you look at heaven and hell? All these things you will have to explain. Now, Karika says there is no birth. Consequently, there is no death. But Karika will have to explain all this. And this is what our Gaudapada is not doing. That having established Ajatavad, the philosophy of non-birth, uh, our Gaudapada is now explaining all this. So things will not be very difficult. In case you think that you are not accepting a particular view that Gaudapada gives, then you will have to listen from the very beginning, because he has he has countered every possible objection. With that, we come down to verse number 71. Na kasji jayate jiva samuvasya na vidyate etat uttamam satyam yatra kinchin na jayate. No jiva comes into existence. There exists no cause that can produce it. The supreme truth is that nothing ever is born. Dear listeners, what Advaita says, that the idea of I associated with a particular body and mind as being real is false. In case you are truly interested in understanding Advaita, Advaita doesn't say that world is false. Advaita doesn't say that mind is false. And most importantly, Advaita never says that God is false. The most the most important thing to be contradicted in Advaita is the sense of I is false. In case you are interested, truly interested in Advaita, you have to know that Advaita only says that the idea that it's I, this I has a reality, because if it's real, it will have to be born and it will die. This is false. If you look at a different system of, say, yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, raj yoga, actually all these yoga preach you exactly the same thing: annihilation of I. Those of you who might have read Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna thoroughly, you'll find that Sri Ramakrishna repeatedly talks about false I, unripe I. When I think of myself as Swami Samarpanananda, who is delivering these talks, this is unripe I. And there's a ripe I corresponding to it. And what's that? Brahman. In bhakti, this Brahman is now God. Is there any difference? No, there is no difference. That which is Brahman is God. The problem with us is, that we superimpose certain ideas from our mind on Brahman, on God. And then we start perceiving God as this and that. This happens in every religion. Now, if you look at other religions, there also the same thing happens. When say Christians say that after the judgment day, you will be judged and God will accept you through the intervention of Jesus. Now, see, we may question all these beliefs because an all-knowing God, why should he need some kind of this some kind of advocacy that Jesus will advocate your case, he will present your case. God knows everything. And not only that, those who took to the path of evil, God knew about them too. Now, we can question all this. And in fact, Christianity and all such dualistic religions, they stumble on this point. Actually, they have no answer, and philosophically, they are unsound. However, the ultimate truth, the ultimate spiritual truth that they propose or propound, that's absolutely correct. What's that? Being one with God. The idea of purgatory, where you're purified. You're purified of what? You're purified of I-ness, the unripe I. You purchase something. Nowadays, Amazon is quite famous. You are delivered. Packet arrives. And you open the packing. Take out the thing and throw the packing away. The idea of unripe ego, unripe I, it is just this. You are put through some karma. You are put through heaven and hell. You are put through purgatory so that all this is burned down. Now, when you are in this world about which we know so well, we are so aware of this this world. It is easy for us to work out why wait for some purgatory, why wait for some hell. That is where Hinduism differs from other religions. If you take this particular point, you'll see that all religions and the different parts of religion, they are talking about the same thing. Burning down of the unripe ego to make you full and complete, to make your ego, the ripe I. There is no more ego in the sense that we understand. You are one with God. You may wonder then what about Christianity, where they say that the individual enters the kingdom of heaven. Now, what happens after that? Your individuality merges with the individuality of God. Well, and these things being a bit subtle to understand, just keep in mind. Sorry. What's the ultimate spiritual reality? What do you gain by being spiritual? You get over your unripe eye, kacha ami. It is destroyed. This is what every system of yoga says. This is what every religion says. And this is what Mandukya Karika is also saying. Just that the way they define it is different, and the way the path is laid out, that's slightly different. But ultimate goal is same. So he says, Na kaschi jayate jiva samuhosya na vidyate. No jiva is ever born. How can jiva be born? If you ask a question, you say this is sacrilege. You are going against my Bible, where where God is described to be creating this universe and breathing life into that clay image. Problem is that because they have not really gone deep into spirituality, and people who went, maybe they have not left much record, because the way Hindus have explored the world of spirituality, no other society has done. Some of these things are metaphorical, what we call Puranic, belonging to the Puranas, as we say in Hindu religion. So these things actually belong to the spiritual stories, the religious stories, but they take it to be true. You'll find a very interesting thing that people of other religions and people of other beliefs, and those who call themselves liberals and rationalists, they come and attack Hindu religion on their myths, mythologies, which is religious stories. And when it comes to their own religious stories, they are silent. And try telling them a word, and they will have only one response: off with his head. Sorry, seem to be. So it says, Etat Uttamam Satyam. Supreme truth. What is the supreme truth? No Jew is ever born. You were not born. I was not born. No one was born. We all appear to be born. So birth has been explained. What is birth? There is no birth. No birth the way we understand. Swamiji has explained Atman and Brahman as Atman is something whose presence is everywhere, but the center is body. Brahman is God is one who is present everywhere and whose center is everywhere. It's a beautiful thing. Nowadays, PhD said that in this universe, in this cosmos, center is everywhere. Now, that doesn't make universe God, but idea becomes a little clear. Center is everywhere. In case of Atman, center is the human body or the body. There cannot be a better explanation to this Atman and Brahman relationship, as Swamiji has said. Atman is everywhere, but center is body. Brahman is everywhere, and center is everywhere. So when a baby is born, what exactly happens? Nothing happens. Centering a particular point in Brahman, of course, you cannot talk of the point and whole. Matter starts changing. As the matter starts changing, you get the idea of birth and rebirth and all those things. But actually, nothing happens. It's just the movement of bubbles, formation of bubbles. The ocean remains the same. Chitta spanditam evedam grahak vat dvayam chittam nirvishayam nityam asangam tena kirtitam. The world of duality, the world in which we live, which is perceived to exist and is characterized by the subject object relationship, is verily a movement of the mind. The mind, again, from the standpoint of reality, has no contact with any object. Hence, it is declared to be eternal and unattached. Now, this is slightly difficult verse to understand. The discussion is here is on the nature of mind. Those of you who have listened to some of the talks related to spirituality, Hindu spirituality, Hindu philosophy, would know that mind is treated as matter, very fine state of matter. Swamiji repeatedly talks about mind as being material, as being matter. Sankhya takes this view, Yoga takes this view, and Even Vedanta takes this view when, say, in Gita, God talks about higher truth and lower truth. God alone has become both. But when you go deeper, when you start thinking about the nature of mind, you realize that it's mind that gives you the knowledge of this world. It's a mind that takes you into deep sleep. It is mind that gives you your dreams. And it's this mind that becomes one with Brahman. As Sri Ramakrishna says, pure mind, pure Atman, they are one. And this is what Mandukya Karika also says. Pure mind, pure Atman, they are one. One and the same. However, when you think of this paradox, which is very interesting, I find it extremely fascinating. If mind is grasping this world, if mind is able to grasp the matter, mind has to be material. Because unless there is some point of contact, mind cannot grasp it. So, contact can be only if mind is matter. Now, mind gives you the idea of God. When you go into samadhi, you know God. Even the prophet said that. That his mind has to be spiritual. How can something be spiritual and can also be material? How can mind be both? So one of these two has to be false. Either spiritual is false or the material is false. What is the way to know it? Mind. If you start probing the nature of mind, if you try to understand what exactly mind is, you'll find this great paradox. Mind is material because it gives us the knowledge of the world. It's spiritual because it gives us the knowledge of God. During samadhi, of course. And even when you go into nirvikalpa samadhi, now we don't know what exactly happens in nirvikalpa samadhi, but we have it from the words of Sri Ramakrishna that in that state, pure mind and pure Atman become one. Mind cannot be material, or mind cannot be such material which at times behaves as matter and at times behaves as consciousness. Because it has to be one uniform thing. You know what is the conclusion? Conclusion is actually extreme. Either the truth is dialectical materialism as proposed by Marx, because idealism cannot have any truth. Materialism cannot have truth. Simply if you take both aspects of mind, if you consider Sri Ramakrishna's words to be true, and if you consider your own observations of this world to be true, then you will realize that either dialectical materialism is true with God being false, or pure mind is one with pure Atman. The world is false. There is no in between. Implying philosophies which belong to materialistic schools of thought, which takes, say, objectivism, empiricism, and Aristotle, and such persons, they are all wrong. And idealism, which includes persons like Kant and Hegel and Spinoza, they are also wrong. Only Marx remains to be true because Marx takes certain ideas from idealism, that is Hegel's ideas, and dialectical materialism becomes ultimate truth, with God being false. Or Ajatavad, our Gaudapada. Gaudapada becomes ultimate real. There is no materialism. And you don't have, it's not some rocket science, very simple thing. When mind is with the world, it gives us the knowledge of objects. So it has to be material. And when in samadhi, it gives us the knowledge of God. It has to be spiritual. At the same time, it cannot be both. It simply means that one of them is false. So either you have to be a Marxist or you have to be a Vedantin. There is no other system. No other religion can be true. Absolutely no religion, absolutely no philosophy, no worldview can be true. Simply if you focus on the what is on the nature of mind. I'm no philosopher. I'm not even a student of philosophy. So you might wonder how I can be so firm in my belief and so convinced. Because ultimately, every philosophy is born from simplicity, simple understanding. The more you make scholarly, the more you make it scholarly, the more you make it scholarly, it only means that you are trying to hide behind words, you are trying to hide behind your emotions, your beliefs. When a mom sees her baby suffering, she doesn't speak much. Emotions are felt. And when a person comes and starts telling how much he admires you, how much he adores you, and how divine you are, and how this and somewhere emotions are hidden behind words. And when the yes, words. It only means that you use too many words to hide something. Philosophy is saying truth is so simple. As for mind knowing the objects, we can see it every day. As for pure mind being one with pure Atman, we have the testimony of Sri Ramakrishna and Gaudapada is here shown with the help of scriptural statements and through arguments. Whether you want to accept it or not, that's your concern. Now, Karl Marx had no faith in spirituality, so he said that religion is the opiate of the society. But the fact remains if we are to accept Marx, why shouldn't we accept Sri Ramakrishna too? After all, Marx was just giving us he was just giving us a theory of economics, a theory of economy. As for his worldview, as for his understanding of the universe, he was in no way superior to me or you or anyone. We all know two fundamental things. I exist, this world exists. I have to prey upon this world to survive. Otherwise, the world will prey upon me to survive. It's such a simple thing. So, Mandukya Karika has very clearly shown that there is no external object. The external object is a construct of the mind. So, if these objects had been real, then there would be subject object duality. It's a famous thing, subject object duality. If this pen were to be a true object, a real object, then there would be subject object duality, then there would be mind object connection. Since this pen itself does not exist, why it does not exist? Well, it was explained earlier. Then what about the objects that are there in the dream? I'm just putting it very simply because these things were discussed in detail. There is no subject object duality. And since there is no subject object duality, reality has absolutely no contact with any object because they don't exist. It is all the very idea of subject object duality is a superimposition on us because of Agyan. For some mysterious reason, for whatever reason, maybe God's will or whatever you say, we have forgotten our true nature. We have forgotten who we are. And because we have forgotten who we are, There are more and more superimpositions. And superimposition, when you mistake something for something, the example used in Vedanta is that of snake and rope. There's a rope and you think it's water line, you think it's a snake. It's superimposition because because you do not know the nature of that, the true nature of the thing lying in front of you, which is a rope. And naturally, that creates many more superimpositions. And because we are in ignorance, we are under ignorance, we are under jnana, we keep on superimposing so many things, and we keep on superimposing on our soul, Atman. We keep on superimposing on our mind. We keep on superimposing on this world, on you, on my loved ones, on those whom I dislike. And worst of all this, we superimpose our own emotions, our own weaknesses, our own strength on God. So God becomes a merciful God because we want mercy from this world. And God, He becomes a just God because we want justice from this world. And God becomes a loving God because we are dying for love. You will look for God, you will look for that supreme being who has the traits. They're predominantly within you. If you are an extremely afraid person, you might see God as somebody who sends terror or who is so powerful that he takes away your fear. Such a simple thing. So, a God who has these traits, Saguna, the such God is a construct of the minds who suffer from certain disabilities or who have certain strength in the sense that they have certain traits. And they superimpose those traits on God. God, who is pure Atman, who is pure consciousness. So funny. When you think that God is merciful, when you think that God will look after us, somewhere you are missing your mom. Mom who looks after you. You want God to look after you, and you never want to grow up. You want God to look after you. What kind of person you are? So beggarly, always begging. There is no subject object duality because mind can never be in touch with the objects because those objects do not exist. And if there is no subject object duality, what's the nature of mind? It has to be one with Atman, as Sri Ramakrishna had said. Unfortunately for us, as far as I personally am concerned, even if Gaudapada had not given us these arguments, for me, mind would have been one with Atman. So obvious. In fact, instead of coming up with this philosophy and that philosophy, what should someone should come up and write a book on philosophy of Sri Ramakrishna, explaining mind, explaining matter, explaining God. Because every philosophy has to explain three things: Ishwar, Jiva, Jagat, God, the individual, and this world. But there are only three things. Only three things that need to be explained. And naturally, mind comes in between because we perceive this world through our mind. We perceive I through mind. So naturally, mind has to be explained. That would be the real philosophy which Gaudapada has done here. This is what our verse number 72 says, that chitta spanditam evedam grahya grahaka dvayam. This world of duality which is perceived to exist and is characterized by the subject-object relationship is verily a movement of the mind. It's a construct of the mind. It has no reality as such. This is what has been shown earlier. The mind, again, from the standpoint of reality, has no contact with any object. It cannot have. Hence, it is described to be eternal and unattached. Mind is eternal, mind is unattached, just like Atman. I'm sure many of you may find it difficult to accept. But that's the truth. योस्ति कल्पित संवृत्या परमार्थ्य नास्त्य सो परतंत्र अभिसंवृत्या स्यान अस्ति परमार्थतः. Verse number 73. That which exists on the strength of false knowledge. The very idea of subject-object duality is false knowledge. That mind is matter, is based on false knowledge, based upon imagination, does not really exist. It's all imagination, it doesn't exist. If you are imagining water on in a desert, in a mirage, it's false knowledge, it doesn't exist. Again, that which is said to exist on the strength of the views advanced by other schools of thoughts does not really exist. Again, a very important, very powerful statement from Karika. Something that does not exist, something that is imagined, that does not exist. Similarly, the different schools of thoughts that we have, Gaudapada did not know of other religions, so he doesn't mention, he only talks about different schools of philosophy that were in India. He says, all these views advanced by the schools of thoughts, they really do not exist. Idea being, these are all false. Nowadays, there is a new term that I'm coming across often, roasting. When you contradict the views of others very powerfully, they call it roasting. Gaudapada doesn't even roast, just blows them away. Hawa. Just plain air. Like bubbles. You blow on a bubble, it bursts. And you realize nothing. There was nothing, there is nothing, there will be nothing. So when these scriptures are explained by persons like persons belonging to dualistic schools of thoughts, they're what? They cannot be ultimately real. Indeed, a very strong statement. Now, we, and particularly me as a person, I'm too ordinary a person to say that Ramanuja was wrong and Madhva was wrong, because they have their arguments, they have their views. But it's such a simple argument. If matters do not exist, how can you have a theory of materialism? Karika has shown very clearly that there is no independent existence of matter. How can you have philosophy based on materialism? Mandukya Karika has very clearly shown there is no independent existence of mind other than consciousness. How can you have theories of idealism? And if mind does not have a separate existence, it doesn't have an identity. In that case, how can you have Vishishta Dvaitavad and Dvaitavad and Shuddha Dvaitavad and this Vad, and how can you have? It's a simple thing. The thing itself does not exist. And you are explaining. So, those of you might have read Candide by Voltaire. Voltaire, such a great philosopher, and his book Candide in French, Connard. So, Candide essentially means innocence. Innocence. So, the protagonist is a very innocent person, and there's a philosopher, I'm forgetting his name, big sounding word. He has explanation to everything. Something like our this evolutionary biologists nowadays say that God gave us two legs so that these can be put into a trousers. So, so now Candide had some abscess in his ear, and he he made it public that Candide will not survive. I read the book long ago, so facts may be slightly wrong. He said because of these reasons, he will not survive, and that's what people knew, that he will not survive. But it was an abscess; it burst, and he survived. And then he wrote a whole book on why he survived. So Candide had read why he's not going to survive. But when the second book came, he never read. There's a plight of these philosophers, be it Plato, be it. See, till they are talking about certain explanations belonging to this world, it's perfectly okay, nothing wrong with it. But when you exhaust all your energies in explaining things that do not exist, well, who will read it? And why should we read it? Now, if we are reading it, only shows that we are deluded. So everything is Aja, everything is unborn. Now, what about scriptures? Why our scriptures keep on talking about? Oh, sorry. Before scriptures, it's the very idea of Aja, unborn. When you say that unborn, Ajatvad, this itself has to be false. Karika says, indeed, it's false. Why? Aja kalpit samvritya paramarthe napyajaha paratantra abhinispitya samvritya jayate tu saha. Atman. Atman is called birthless, Ajat. From the standpoint of false knowledge based upon imagination. The imagination that is there in this world, the imagination which has been made extremely strong by different philosophers and scientists and all those people. To counter that, the word is used, the expression used is birthless. In reality, it is not even birthless. No, it's not birthless. Because when you say birthless, the idea of birth remains. Whenever you say no, there has to be a yes. The unborn Atman is said to be born from the standpoint of the false knowledge cherished by other schools of thought. There are other schools of thought who cherish these thoughts. See, recently, I had one of those matching arguments from, you can imagine which kind of people. And their favorite argument that Hinduism is not even a religion. Why? No, it's not mentioned. It's not mentioned in Vedas and it's not mentioned in the Ramayana, etc., etc. I told two simple things. Number one, the British stamp never carried the name of this country because they were the only stamp. And when other countries came up with the idea of stamps, they put the name of their countries. Hinduism didn't have its name because that's the only original. Only when you fake it that you give a name. Secondly, name is a mental construct. Name is a mental construct. Dear listeners, please keep this in mind. Name is a mental construct. The moment you are putting a name to your God, the moment you are putting a name to your scriptures, and the moment you are putting name to your religion, know that it's a human construct. You can go on talking about it's given by God and it's God's revelation. No, it's not. What about Hindu religion? Hindu religion says religion is Sanatan. Yes, Sanatan, we eternal. There is no name. God, Brahman. There is no name. And Ved, it simply means knowledge. There is no name. Hindu scriptures, Hindu religion itself, and Hindu God, they have no names because names are mental construct. And yet we call ourselves Hindu. Why? To counter these people because they will not understand. This is what is being said here. That to make these people understand that you say that Atman is born, Jiva is born, and so Jiva has to strive for Mukti. Jiva has to do this, Jiva has to do that. To counter that, we say that Atman is actually Aja, unborn. But in reality, the idea of being born and being unborn is meaningless. And these, when we have these such expressions in scriptures, it's only because scriptures want to impress those ideas in our mind that look, know that in reality you are unborn. In reality, you are beyond any change. Verse number 75. अभूत अभिनिवेशो अस्ति द्वयं तत्र न विद्यते द्वया भावं स बुद्ध्वेव निर्निमित्तो न जायते. Verse number 75 says, sorry, the 74. Ajah kalpita samvritya paramarthya napyajah paratantra abhinispitya samvritya ojayate tu sa. This we explained, sorry. So actually, all these ideas of scriptures and teacher and students, these all belong to the relative world. They are just to impress the idea that look, other people are talking like this, so we have to say certain things, understand it, and be free. And then you will realize that there never was any duality. So abhut abhinivesho asti dvayam tatra na vidyate. Verse number 75. People persistently hold to the idea of unreality, that is duality. We are trained since our birth. We are trained to see duality. Persistently, we are persistent in the subject-object relationship, this duality of subject-object, and I and you, so persistent in us. But such duality does not exist. One who has realized the absence of duality is not born again, since there remains no longer any cause for birth. Why does birth take place? Birth takes place simply because we do not know our true nature. We are unaware of our true nature. And the idea that this world is real, this mind is real, and I am real, it has been hammered within us so persistently, that now we believe it. There is that story of Queen Madalsa who used to tell her kids, even when they were in cradles, Nitya Niranjanosi, you are pure. And Swamiji wanted that people should people should teach their kids these ideas that you are Nitya Niranjan, you are eternally pure. There is no impurity in you. This idea of birth comes simply because persistently the idea of subject object duality has been hammered within us. And rebirth is caused because of that. The idea of rebirth. But once you realize that there is no subject object duality, how can there be any rebirth? Now, this idea of rebirth, etc., that we are discussing, remember that when we talk about birth, death, etc., these are expressions from the relative world. And those of you who have listened to our Kathopanishad talks, which is there on the YouTube, says rebirth is affected by yatha karma yatha shrutam, the kind of work that you have done and the kind of spiritual knowledge that you have. Once you have the knowledge of ultimate oneness, once you get out of this notion that has been persistently hammered within you of subject object duality, how can there be any birth? So there is no more rebirth for you. This is what Mandukya is trying to tell us. As Atman, we never had birth. But we imagine that we have birth. And this imagination is pushing us towards rebirths. To stop this cycle of birth and death, to stop this cycle of rebirths, we need to know that we are infinite. We are Atman. And that The idea of duality of any form, it has been hammered in our mind since the time of creation. And that's why we believe it. If you are told 1,000 times that you are incapable, you are incapable, you are incapable, you will become incapable. And if people keep on talking very good about, oh, he's so good, so good. See, moms keep on telling their kids, oh, my son, my daughter, my baby is so good. So baby starts feeling that sense of goodness. The idea of duality has been impressed so much in us that we believe them to be true. But once you can get out of it, you are out of it. Abhinivesh is superimposed on us, hammered in us. And the term is agraha. Persistently, persistently. Yada na lavate hetun uttam adham madhyaman tadhana jayate chittam hetavave phalam kutah. And when the mind finds no cause, there is no cause, superior, inferior, or middling, it becomes free from birth. How do you get out of this problem of rebirth? Says there are three different kinds of rebirths. One is you are born as gods, etc. For that, you have to perform certain kind of sacrifices, and you have to have certain kind of knowledge, certain spiritual practices. The middle kind is when you are born as human being, and the inferior is when you are born in some lower species. But once you realize that there is no subject-object duality, there is no such species. Naturally, you will not be born in any of these things. Rebirth is affected by this lack of knowledge. And because there is this lack of knowledge, we firmly believe that duality is the truth. Once we realize that duality is the truth, we want to be good. But in our effort to be good, we fail and we end up being medium, or sometimes we end up being inferior. And this is what takes us to different species. So he says that once the cause itself is destroyed, there can never be effect. Once you burn down the seed, how can there be tree? It's just not possible. So all these scriptures that ask you to perform certain duties within Nised, injunctions and prohibitions, they become meaningless. Why they become meaningless? Because you have realized the ultimate truth that it's all one. If there is all one, why should you be getting into acts that promote duality? So, अनिमित्तस्य चित्तस्य यानुत्पत्ति समाद्वाया अजातस्यैव सर्वत्रस्य चित्तदृश्यं हि तद यतः. This non-evolution, this state of knowledge of mind, which is unborn and free from causal relation, is absolute and constant. Everything else is also equally unborn. So, what is true of the mind is true of everything else as well. For all duality is merely an objectification of the mind. Whatever the duality that you can think of, any kind of duality, think of scriptures, think of your teacher, think of yourself as sinner, think of yourself as virtuous, think it's all objectification of the mind. There is no object really outside. It's only the objectification of the mind. Mind is getting objectified. Mind becomes objectified. Mind thinks of those things, and those objects appear to us to as real. Why they appear to us as real? Because there has been this persistent conviction, persistent belief that duality is the reality. And once you have realized this truth that heaven, hell, etc., this was discussed earlier also, that's why I'm going fast. These actually do not exist. Then what happens? Buddha nimittatam satyam hetum prithak anapnuvan vita shokam tatha kamam adhayam abhayam padam ashnute. Once you have realized that these things do not exist, realizing the absence of causality as ultimate truth, and not finding any other reason for birth, one attains that state which is free from grief, desire, and free. There has to be an impelling force for your rebirth. Once that impelling force is gone, how does it go away? By the knowledge that there is no impelling force. That's funny thing about it. There is no more rebirth for you. And that idea is repeated. Abhut avi niveshadhi sadrishe tat pravartate vastu abhavam sa buddhoeva nisangam vinivartate. This is actually the same idea is being repeated in different words, so I'm going a bit fast. On account of on account of attachment to unreal objects, the mind pursues such objects, but it comes back to its pure state when it attains non-attachment, realizing their unreality. You think that mirage contains water and you run towards it. But once you have realized that it's a mirage, you don't run towards it. Once you have known, once you have known that there's no water on the road when you are driving during summer, then you are not scared of that water. The mind runs towards pleasure, runs away from pain simply because it thinks them to be real. But once you realize that these are unreal, mind will not run after that. This is the state of non-duality. This is the state of true knowledge. So, well, we'll continue from verse number 80 in the next talk. But now, these ideas, those of you who have been listening continuously would know that ideas are now getting repeated. Thank you so much.